Welcome to the Week 8 postgame show. The season's rolling along. We continue to miss Cruz, maybe this week for a good reason, as the Duyes boys come up just short again. I am joined by Jeremy Morrison to break down the Week 8 Rhode Island games. Jeremy, how's it going?
Doing well, Joey. A little bit sick, but I'm here.
There you go. Being a trooper, getting through it. There was some good action on the court this week. We're going to start with that Swish Kebabs and Duyes boys game. Swish Kebabs do win by 2. A Randy Butler layup nearly at the buzzer. Not sure if, the Duyes boys were out of timeouts, so we had a clock kind of controversy, but not really. They were out of timeouts and would have had to go the length of the floor down 2. So not that they couldn't have hit a miracle shot, but a very unlikely change in the result. Anyway, but Duyes boys played them close. Swish Kebabs only had 5 guys. They were worried about the size mismatch coming into the game. None of the big guys really for the Swish Kebabs showed up. So there you go. And the Duyes boys were in it down to the wire. Kutu had 45, but I'll kind of let you break down, the action from there.
Yeah, it was a great game. I thought the Swish Kebabs kind of had control. They were up like between 5 and 10 for a good part of the third quarter into the fourth, and then the Duyes boys came back. And I talked to Randy Butler afterwards, and he didn't really go ISO a lot during that game, but he went ISO. I was a little surprised he took the last shot, but hey, he made the layup, and it was a good shot, and they won. And John Kutu probably had his best game of the season, which is saying a lot because he's pretty much every game is a fantastic game for him. 45 points on 69% shooting. And I want to give a shout out to Jacob Mello. He 6 for 13 from 3, and he made a lot of really clutch shots down at the end. Like the final minute, it was anybody's game. Final 2 or 3 minutes, actually. So a very exciting game, which I wasn't really expecting, even with the short-handed Swish Kebabs. I thought that they were still going to win, not handedly, but the Duyes boys impressed me. Anthony Melise played very well too. I want to shout him out.
Yeah, Jacob Mello, crazy 3-pointer when they were down 2 in the final minute to give him a 1-point lead and kind of start the madness. But yeah, very impressive win for the Swish Kebabs. Another team with an impressive win, the Skyhookers, they take down the Boston Blazers 66-58. Another game that was back and forth. I felt like, and I saw most of this one, the Skyhookers were always leading. And I know like that may be misleading, but they would have a 2 or 3 point lead, would blow it up to 7, 8, or 9. The Blazers would make a little mini run, get it back to a tied game or a 3-point game, and then the Skyhookers would go on another run to get it back to 8, 9 points. And then they made their free throws down the stretch. So Skyhookers definitely, took the win in this one, led by Brendan O'Donnell's 23. What'd you see maybe that, disappointed you from the Blazers and or impressed you from the Skyhookers?
Chase Allman impressed me from the Skyhookers, even though he finished with 9. We've seen him have bigger games, but 11 rebounds. He had a good presence, and there's some questionable calls that he probably went against him. I think the Boston Blazers, they might rely on Corey Strickland for creating his own shot too much, and Corey Strickland's very good, but they're kind of missing one more guy that can you can give him the ball, and there's a good chance he'll either shoot it and make it, or he'll drive. And Evan St. Pierre had a good game, 4 for 9 from 3. But I think sometimes Corey Strickland they turn to him and say, all right, do something for us. And as good as Corey is, it's not enough against some of these teams. But give the credit to Skyhookers. Zach Allman had an impressive game, 2 blocks. It was a good game. They're kind of both in that middle 4 that I was mentioned in the power rankings. So I knew this would be close, but Skyhookers were the better team.
Yeah, and speaking of Corey Strickland, he gets to face Brett Cody next week, who will more than likely be guarding him for the halfway crooks. And speaking of the halfway crooks, that's called the transition. Jeremy, the halfway crooks take down the Werewolves 77-68 in a game where the Crooks led by as many as 20-something. And then the Werewolves made it a little interesting in the fourth quarter. They outscored the halfway crooks 25-12 in the fourth quarter. Never really got within, and I'm not trying to be, disrespectful. Never really got within 7 or 8, I would say. They fouled a little bit, but to get it back to that was impressive. Brett Cody, I mentioned him, big game, only 19 points, and I say only, hitting some threes, which I've been saying all along was part of his game. When those start falling, it adds another dimension. And I mentioned this in the post-game interview with you, actually, his ability to guard Brian Heston, who's a great player, and, limit him. And by limit him, it's 22 points on 9 of 23 shooting and 15 rebounds. That's limiting Brian Heston, right? But being able to guard Heston almost by himself, I mean, you're always aware of where he is, but being able to kind of almost take Heston out of the equation for everybody else on the floor was a big key to this game, and was noticeable, at least for me, in the game. What'd you see from that matchup and the matchup from the teams as a whole?
Yeah, Brett Cody's becoming one of the most fun players to watch, and you're right. He's hitting threes. He was three 3-pointers, 8 total field goals, and I think the other 5 field goals were dunks. So it's either a 3 or a crazy dunk that he just gets up there like kind of no one else in the league. So he's fun to watch. Mike Wilbur had a really good game too. 7 for 12, 16 points. I think Mike Wilbur is a little underrated. He can hit the 3. He'll pull up in your face and hit it, and he can handle it really well. He was going against Dave Campbell, who's a really good athlete, and he was able to score over him a few times. And I think that's one of the things that hurt the Werewolves. Dave Campbell's a very good scorer, and he struggled this game, and I can't really explain it. He had a 3 and a couple layups, but he just couldn't really make shots down the stretch, and that hurt them. He's a great player, and maybe it just wasn't his game tonight or last night. But I think when you rely on Gino and Brian as much as they do, you need players like Dave to kind of be the difference maker and pick up some of the slack, because the rest of the lineup, they're not able to create their own shots like Brian and Gino can. Yeah,
and Dave Campbell, I would say, had an off game. Always fun when we play. I warned everybody, it's always interesting and always fun to play in games like that. Mike Wilbur able to create his own shot as well. Not only hit the shot, but able to go by people, and it's almost like a deceptive, go by move because he is bigger, but gets right by him, finishes at the rim. Great finishing at the rim. And Jared Hansen as well, able to create his own shot and had one of his better games. Just, and that was part of our issue last year, to kind of put a cap on the whole conversation. When you can't guard somebody on another team one-on-one, it breaks everything else down. So last year, Brian Heston was able to beat his man, almost one-on-one or 1.5-on-1, and then we have to help and they kick it, right? And that was kind of what we did to them this year. Jared Hansen able to get by his guy without any help, and so then they have to help. Mike Wilbur able to create his own, and Brett Cody. And when all 3 of them are able to do that, a lot of teams are going to have issues, not just the Werewolves. We're going to move on. So Lob City gets the forfeit win. They didn't even take the court against the Pizza Rolls, but we'll see Lob City next week. I believe they get the Bullworms, and then, of course, in the playoffs. So the last game that actually did happen was Boom Shakalaka and the Alaskan Bullworms, 90-66. It took a 31-13 fourth quarter for Boom Shakalaka to pull away, single-digit margin going into that fourth quarter. I know you didn't see much of this game. You kind of have the stats in front of you. Brandon Sweeney has played in the league before. He goes for 42. I can talk about him a little bit. Matt Barber, again, I'm sure impressed you, a 37-point performance.
Yeah, and I'm kind of upset I missed this game. I haven't seen Brandon Sweeney play, but it looked like it was a battle between him and Matt Barber. Matt Barber going for 37 and Brandon Sweeney going for 42. So it's a little surprising for me to hear that for 3 quarters it was anybody's game. Alaskan Bullworms are talented with Matt Barber, but Boom Shakalaka has beaten some talented teams. So to hear that this game went into the fourth quarter as anybody's game surprised me a little bit. Jeremy D'Amico, 24 rebounds. I think that's the most I've seen by one player this season. So good job by him.
Yeah, for sure. And Brandon Sweeney's a bigger player, does shoot the 3, as we see by his 3 for 8 from 3, in his first game of the season. Is going to be a nice piece for that team, as Boom Shakalaka has some games coming up where if they beat the Swish Kebabs and then the Crooks beat the Swish Kebabs in the makeup week, Boom could be the 3 seed. and then that would put Swish as the 4 seed. So there's already that playoff aspect. Boom Shakalaka very aware of what is at stake, and they were at 500 at one point, and I believe they're now at 5-3. And looking to get that 3 seed, which is a much better spot to be in than that 4-5 matchup where we expected them. You've kind of done some playoff outlook stuff. Any last words about like the seeding stuff you got?
Well, one comment about Boom Shakalaka. They've been winning games while Lucas Martin has been struggling a little bit from 3. So I think in any given game, he was 3 for 14 last night. He could go off for 9 for 14. And he could demolish some of the good teams. So I think maybe he's just in a bit of a slump the last few weeks. I'm not really sure why, but we know he could shoot. He's certainly done it in the past. As for playoffs, not much to say except the middle 4. I'm curious where all those guys are gonna land, and I think those guys are really gonna fight to get good seeding so that they don't have to face Lob or halfway crooks.
Yeah, and what are the middle 4?
Middle 4, Boom Shakalaka, Skyhookers, Boston Blazers, Werewolves. Those are the middle 4 that have kind of moved up and down my power rankings list kind of all season. And anytime two of the 4 face each other, it's going to be a game to watch. Those are my middle 4.
Sweet. So of those 4, Boom Shakalaka is the only team that could get up to number 3. And surpass one of the teams in that other higher tier because the Crooks and Swish Kebabs do still play. So some seeding stuff to still figure out. Week 9, next week, the 13th, if I can do math, I think, Wednesday the 13th. And then on the 20th, we do have some makeup games from week 1, Crooks Swish Kebabs, as well as a couple games from week 7, maybe week 6 or 7, where they didn't happen, and every team does, need to play every team. As long as we don't get any snow, we have the makeup weeks, and the playoffs will start at exactly. So far, so good. And the playoffs will start, right around March 1st. So talk about March Madness. It's already feeling like the playoffs with some of these games, but playoffs are right around the corner. Jeremy, thank you very much. And that's a wrap for the weekly Postgame show. We will see you guys. Some teams have 2 games left. Every team has 1 game left. And then the playoffs, they're almost here for the winter 19 season in Rhode Island.